So we're calling the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on October 19th, 2020. As chairman of the Finance Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and subsequent extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are first providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the city's website for the meeting link. To join by phone, dial 1-929-205-6099. The meeting ID is 811-0177-1007, and the password is 180024. The public may also view the meeting via channel 16. Second, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public posting. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website at www.nashuanh.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall and the National Public Library. Third, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. Fourth, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods I've already mentioned, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are to be taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So could Alderwoman Harriet Gathright, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Alderman Patricia Clee.
I am here. I can hear everyone. I am currently alone in my home, and I am social distancing per the requirement to do so.
Alderwoman Elizabeth Liu. I don't think I saw her.
She contacted me to say that she's out of town and unable to attend tonight.
Okay. Clerk, I am away, but I'm alone. I can hear you, and I am practicing social distancing. Alderwoman Shoshanna Kelly.
I'm here. I'm alone. I can hear everyone, and I'm practicing social distancing.
And Alderman Brandon Michael Laws, I think we did hear that he would not be here. Alderman Michael O'Brien Sr., I think is still out, correct?
No, I am here.
Oh.
And I am alone.
Hi, Mike.
Yep. News of my demise is greatly exaggerated, yes.
That's okay. Good to see you. And Mayor Jim Dodges.
I am not attending personally because of COVID-19, and I am alone here in the living room. All right, thank you very much. Public, pardon?
We have a quorum.
Oh, thank you. Public comment. Anyone from the public wish to speak to the committee? All right, if not, we'll go to communications, but before that, we also, I see, have Alderman Cleaver. We have Chief Rhodes and Assistant Chief Walker.
And Alderman Dow, I think, was
We have
on as well.
Alderman Dowd. We have Kelly Parkinson, the Purchasing Manager. Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director. There's Alderman Dowd. We have John Griffin, CFO, and maybe others that I cannot see. In any event, the first communication is from Kelly Parkinson, Purchasing Manager. Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Mr. Mayor, I motion to accept, place on file, and approve the replacement of a 2009 Ford F-350 4x4 pickup truck and purchase a 2020 Ford 4x4 SDR CRS F-350 pickup truck in the Mechanics Division in the amount of $58,302.96 to Hillsborough Ford Light and Graphic and Addison Industries. Funding will be through the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund, SURF, by roll call.
Now, I believe Chief Rhodes is here on this, I presume.
I am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the honorable board members who are here, and glad to see Alderman O'Brien is up and taking nourishment. That's good to see, sir. So this replacement actually is a vehicle for our mechanics division that we deferred last year. It should have been replaced in last year's fiscal SURF budget. It is truly needed. Our mechanics do, well, it's an F-350, and it's a heavy duty truck based upon the needs and the requirements that we have for it. Our mechanics plow all 7 of our locations of snow in the winter. They haul heavy duty truck parts around. They move, as you can imagine, the tires for our apparatus are extremely heavy. So this is, again, it's a planned replacement. It's 1 year overdue. And we did come in under the amount that was authorized for us to spend.
All right, very good. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the chief. When I noticed on your purchase order, you didn't have anything stipulated for MHQ as far as tricking it out with lights and sirens. I imagine that this vehicle will be used at times for emergency purposes. So is the lights going to be included in everything with this?
Mr. Chairman, may I answer?
Of course, please.
Thank you. Alderman, yes. What we have done is our mechanical division is very talented. So what we have done is they have spec'd out this vehicle with what is called the upfitters package in it already. So it comes with all of the factory installed switching, additional switching. So therefore, we don't need to send it to an upfitter like MHQ to do the work. Our mechanics will install the different components of this vehicle, the smaller components themselves, therefore saving us money.
Just a follow up. Well, thank you for doing that. It's a good way to save a buck, and I'm sure the citizens appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
clerk says yes. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mayor Dodges.
Yes. Motion passes. We have next communication from Kelly Parkinson, Purchasing Manager. Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Okay. I motion to accept, place on file, and approve the replacement of a 2019 Ford Police Interceptor utility vehicle with the purchase of a 2020 Ford Police Interceptor utility vehicle in the amount of $49,516.55 from M-H-Q Inc. Funding will be through the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund, SURF. Currently, funds are available due to the cost savings throughout FY 2020. It is also anticipated additional escrow or supplemental appropriations will be used to transfer additional funds into SURF during the first quarter of FY 2021 by roll call.
Now we have, I think Karen Smith is here. Someone from the PD. I saw someone.
Yes, it's Brian Soika, Fleet Supervisor.
Okay, thank you, officer.
Brian, can you spell your last name?
Sojka.
Thank you.
Can you fill us in on this item?
The reason we're replacing this vehicle, the past vehicle that we had got totaled, so it was a total loss. So we're replacing just a vehicle that we actually just had a total. It was a total loss. We're just replacing that vehicle with the newer version because the new vehicles are 2020s, and of course that is a redesigned vehicle now.
Okay.
For a marked unit.
And what was the year of the one that got totaled?
That was a 19. I'm sorry. Give me one quick second.
It said 2019.
Oh, 29.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a 2000. Yes, it was a fairly new vehicle.
All right. Any questions or comments?
Mr.
Alderwoman
Mayor,
Clee.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yeah.
Alderman O'Brien. Thank
Alderman
you.
O'Brien.
My question is to the fleet supervisor. Do we get any insurance money with that particular total vehicle, and is it being applied to this new vehicle, or is it going to the general fund or back into SURF?
I believe Karen Smith will be able to help you with that answer. I'm sorry.
Ms. Smith?
I could help out, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
too.
Oh, CFO Griffin then.
Yeah, in direct response to Alderman O'Brien, the Risk Department has provided funding for this vehicle because of the newness of the vehicle. We felt that instead of tying things up with a supplemental appropriation, we would simply ask the treasurer for debt if there was enough funds to pay for the vehicle. And as the reading of the motion indicates, we plan on putting monies into SURF through either the escrow process, appropriations not spent, or a supplemental appropriation for revenues that exceed budget. So the money will be going back into SURF, but you can't spend revenue in the city. You have to have an appropriation. So this is the most expeditious way of handling this matter. In addition to that, the most recent Board of Aldermen meeting referred this vehicle to budget, and budget recommends full passage for your next meeting on September 9th. So that's the plan, is to replace the vehicle in September with the vote of the full board upon passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Anyone else? Alderwoman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, what Alderman O'Brien had asked was the question that I had wanted to ask. Sorry, was this Mr. Griffin? The question I have is this the same item that we had that was going to be that we did get some insurance money for, but that we have to we put that into as a revenue, and then we just file this? Is this how this is working, or?
That's a great question, Alderwoman Clee. The other vehicle, a transit vehicle, because of the magnitude and size of that vehicle, we actually got insurance money that you folks will be, I think you've already done it. You've appropriated as a supplemental appropriation, the money's back into SURF. But both Treasurer Fredette and I feel comfortable that there's enough funds available, and there'll be more funds available based on our strategy to put more money in September. through the escrow process.
Mr. Mayor, follow up.
Yes, of course.
Pardon my, I feel like I'm not quite understanding, and I apologize, Mr. Griffin. So this does not go through insurance, so there is no insurance, we just do, or is it that it wasn't completely paid off, or how did this work? I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, maybe it can be clearer.
Yes.
Basically, we're self-funded through the risk department. So when the Board of Aldermen appropriate over $3 million to the risk department every budget year, there's monies there to pay for accidents.
Okay, now I get it. Thank you.
When you bring it out of the risk department, it becomes a revenue to the city. And as I mentioned, you can't spend revenue, you have to spend an appropriation. So we thought because of the fact that we have saved money over fiscal 20, we have enough to fund this without going through the process of the supplemental appropriation at this time.
Thank you. Now I understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Could the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clee,
Yeah. Sorry, hit the wrong button there.
clerk says yes. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mayor Donches.
Yes, motion passes. Next item is another communication from Kelly Parkinson, Purchasing Manager.
Okay,
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Mr. Mayor, I motion to accept, placed on file, and approve the purchase of a Faro 3D laser scanner Focus S70 with accessories and extended warranty from Faro Technologies, Inc. in the amount of $56,344.65. Funding will be available in the Justice Assistant Grant, CESF, FY20 by roll call.
Is Miss Smith, are you the one who's going to speak to this? Or who?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can speak to the fact that this is a grant-funded purchase that we're looking to do in the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Grant. And I do have a couple of officers waiting to speak to this. I have Sergeant Stone online, and he can answer any specific questions and give a brief overview.
Sergeant Stone?
How you doing, Mr. Mayor? This machine here was brought to our attention from the company itself, and several other departments in the area also use the same machine. What it will do ultimately is we can bring it to any scene or event or anywhere and take 3D images of the event so that you could actually walk through later and look at the whole scene and lock everything in place. It should ultimately cut down on any time that we are on any crime scene or accident scene or anything like that we may need it.
Okay, great. Helps with the crime scene analysis, I take it. Any questions or comments? Could the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
clerk says yes. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mayor Donches.
Yes. Motion passes. Now we have 3 communications which were received after the agenda was prepared. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to permit the consideration and receipt and consideration of those communications?
Yes, it says, there being no objection, Mayor Donches suspended the rules to allow for the introduction of 2 additional communications received after the agenda was prepared.
Well, actually, it's 3, but okay, so unless there's an objection, we will suspend the rules.
Okay,
I don't hear an objection. The first of those is from Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director.
okay. I motion to accept, placed on file, and approve the purchase of 20 10-feet curved concrete Jersey barriers in the amount of $35,167.56 from Crowd Control Warehouse. Funding will be available in the Gopher Fund grant by roll call.
And Mr. Cummings is here to explain this item. So, and I see he's on, so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. And I am more than happy to discuss actually probably the broader plan or conversation that this specific expenditure is going to ultimately trigger. So before you is a request to spend not more than $36,000 for a specific type of barrier. Why are we asking for this? Because ultimately, we are in the early stages of trying to contemplate whether we should continue the narrowing of Main Street into next season. I had a conversation with PEDC last night, and this is the start of a conversation. I know legislation is going to be required to amend the previous approved ordinance or resolution that was adopted. But ultimately, we've heard positive feedback over the last few months. And it seems as though there is strong interest to continue with the narrowing of Main Street for the future outdoor dining seasons. When we first started this, we were in the midst of COVID-19, and we were just starting to open back up as not just a city, but in the state, and time was of the essence. And we really looked at having the barriers through the lens of what was safe and functional, but not necessarily with an eye towards aesthetics. Moving forward, you know, there's a lot of variables that still need to be decided upon. My memo goes into detail on some of those variables that we'll need to discuss, and I hope that this group here is part of that conversation as we move forward. But ultimately, what we would like to do is, if there's a desire and ambition, and it's my recommendation, we do continue with the narrowing of Main Street. We do it with an eye towards having a little bit better of the aesthetics. And so with that being said, we've outreached to a couple groups that could provide us some barriers. We want to pilot them for the next month or so along Main Street, assess, you know, based off of the feedback we get from the community, based on DPW's input, based on, you know, your input as well. We will then ultimately look to try to go out for a procurement where we would own barriers. And so with that being said, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the Finance Committee, I'm asking for you to favorably approve this request of just over $35,000 so we can start this conversation.
So of course, we're leasing the barriers now. And if we are going to continue this in future years, it would be better to purchase the barriers because the lease expense is quite a bit. And secondly, we want to put these out so people, including the Board of Aldermen and the public, can see a couple of different alternatives that we could ultimately pursue to get the public feedback and feedback from the Board of Aldermen regarding those alternatives. Alderwoman Klee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cummings, I'm sorry, Director Cummings, I apologize. The question that I have, I love the idea. I love the idea of letting us see different ones. And I love the idea of doing this year after year. I don't love the idea of this being there during the winter months. I'm assuming that we would still remove them during the winter months if we decided that this becomes a permanent way of doing business. And if we did decide, and again, I know this is an if we did decide to move forward with this year after year, would we here in the city have the ability to put these in place? I know we not only rented them, but we had to hire someone to put them in place because of their weight and so on. Would we be able to do that, or would we still have to contract that out?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
So those are excellent questions, and ones we don't have answers to, only because it really depends on the barriers that we choose. I think ultimately we would always be picking up the barriers at the end of the quote unquote outdoor dining season, which is November 15th. these barriers would be our responsibility. So we would need to, have storage for them over the winter months. That all needs to be taken into consideration. Those logistical considerations have been raised by DPW, and those are going to be some of the things that we'll be looking to develop plans for when and if we move forward. Ultimately, the barriers that we're piloting meet all the concerns that are outlined. We would be able to store these barriers. One of the barriers we would be more easily able to implement year after year. If we go with one of the other barriers, I think, we would probably need to have a third party deploy them every year. And so there's going to be trade-offs, pros and cons, depending on which ones we actually choose. And so we'll make that clear as time goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can just do a follow-up.
Yes.
Thank you. I like the idea of them not being there during the winter, more for snow removal and the protection of the barriers themselves too. I think that there would be a lot of damage. I also, just my 2 cents, I had seen online another town that had done something similar, and then they had local artists actually paint them and create them and do different types of things that they had. They actually looked a little similar to the Jersey barriers, but they had a different texture to them. I kind of like that idea too. So I'm interested in seeing what you'll be putting forward. So thank you.
Now, of course, if we own them, we could authorize that if we wanted to. The concrete barrier alternative it's still concrete barrier, but it's more of a pastel color, and the shape is not quite as austere as the Jersey barrier. It's more, it's a more pleasing shape, I'm going to say. When we talked with Boston about their approach towards all this, because one of the barriers that we are suggesting be piloted is a water-filled metal barrier that would allow plantings and the like. We're thinking we would do that on a side street where there's not the same kind of traffic resistance and parallel to the traffic. The concrete barriers in Boston, they still use concrete barriers for any walls that face the traffic, but then the parallel walls, they allow greater latitude on what can be used. But in any event, we'd be able to see 2 alternatives here and begin to consider. With the concrete barriers, we could authorize, if we own them, obviously we could let someone paint them. But that would again be one of the things we would discuss once we see how these work and what they look like. Alderwoman Kelly. Alderwoman Kelly?
Yeah, most of my questions were asked, so I was trying to decide if I had any additional ones. I wanted to ask about timing. So I think this is great. I know that we've heard really good feedback from downtown. But my question is, we're running up against fall. When does the lease run out on the current ones? And is there a reason why we need to approve it now when we probably won't put them up until after winter?
Well, we would put these up when we get them. So we think we could get these up in September. And so we'd see them for a couple of months this year. At least that's the plan.
So is our lease out on the ones that are currently there?
If
The
I
lease
may,
goes till I think November 15, doesn't it?
correct.
So that's kind of the drop dead date. So if we get these in September, they'd be out 6-8 weeks before the removal.
What's the price comparison if we kept with the lease versus switching to the purchase?
For next year or for this current year?
Current year.
Well, these we can use gopher funds for these, meaning federal funds directed through the state of New Hampshire. So the tax impact here is, 0. The plan is
My question is, are we breaking a lease of the ones that we have? And what
No.
was the cost per month? And are we getting a better deal by buying them and using them for 6 to 8? That's my question.
If
So
I may, Mr. Mayor.
the idea would be to move the Jersey barriers to provide additional outdoor dining space on some of the side streets. So the cost, we would continue to lease those as we are, and it's a seasonal lease. So I mean, returning them early wouldn't get us anything anyway.
Like, yep.
In future years, I mean, we would present the cost to you. It depends how we go. Certainly, the cost of buying would be more than the cost of leasing, but the the lease is almost like $100,000 for installation and leasing, and we'd probably have a 3 or 4 year, depending on which way we went. If we did this, we'd have a 3 or 4 year payback if we bought them, and we have more attractive barriers on top of it. But that would be, an analysis and decision we'd have to make after we see the barriers and when we are able to present you with the final cost of purchase. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
So right now, the 35,167.56, that's being, would be paid through the Gopher Fund, correct?
Correct.
All right. So that's for the purchase.
Correct.
So,
But it's 200 feet. It's just, it's not the whole city. It's just 200 feet.
okay,
We currently have 2,400 feet out there. So, it's a decent section, but certainly not a full replacement of everything.
okay. So going forward, let's say next year, are we expecting to purchase more and probably not be on the Gopher?
We're not aware that there'd be Gopher funds available next year.
I'm
So
pretty sure it won't, but
were we to purchase, we would need to use city funds. And of course, we'd own 200 feet already if we went with the concrete ones, but we'd need, to buy the remainder with city funds.
okay. I guess my other question is, so if we pass this in the Finance Committee, it goes to the Board of Aldermen, is there a, I guess, a meeting, a public hearing on this? Or it's just not necessary? Or is this something that just, if they want to have public comments? I'm just curious because I already know that I have quite a few constituents would not be for this, to be honest with you. I already know that. So I'm just trying to figure it out, if we go forward, then there's public comments. Is that correct?
Well, now the decision as to whether to make, this is not a commitment to buy anything more than these 200 feet and the metal things that would also be covered by Gopher. So there's no commitment beyond this pilot. So the idea here would be that we get these, we put them out, people can see them, you can see them, we can decide, do we want to go forward or not? If so, what kind of thing do we want? Do we want to lease? Do we want to buy? But this would just show what some of the alternatives, what a couple of other alternatives are at no cost to the city. And then again, ultimately, if the city were to buy these, there would need to be, an appropriation. There would need to be a vote by the Board of Aldermen, just like any other expenditure. Alderman Cummings, or excuse me, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And then in addition to that, there would have to be a legislation authorizing that the barriers continue to narrow Main Street.
Correct.
The current legislation reads that it expires on November 15th. So separate and aside from the financial expenditure, there will also need to be a conversation, which I think gets to your question, is a piece of policy for the city to adopt, which there would be a committee hearing on. I don't necessarily believe there would be a public hearing, but there absolutely would be a committee hearing, which would be public, where testimony could be given on that specific issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
So You said that this is for 400 feet, and I apologize if you outlined this in your, that, I thought that was what the mayor said. 400.
200 feet.
200.
200.
Thank you. Sorry. So I want to know what the full amount of feet that we have out now is.
It's 2,400 linear feet right now. So this is 200 out of 2,400 feet.
If we decide that after this we don't want to do that, is there a place for us to repurpose these barriers?
I'm sure there would be. I mean, we'd have to think about it. But for example, there's a little park, around the oval where we've closed off part of the oval, with the unnecessary sort of lanes over there. That could be duplicated on the other end of the courthouse oval. On the south end, there's a similar configuration down there. I'm sure we could find a use for them. Is that Alderman Kelly? Do you have another follow-up?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's a question, it's just sort of a comment. So again, I reiterate that I think this project has been great. I'm concerned that it's already something thousand for 200 linear feet. And if we decide to then buy the rest, we're looking at 2,200 square feet that we need to fund come next year, and likely will not have gopher to cover that. So I just want to make sure that as we're thinking about this, we're being, thoughtful about what would come down to the city as an expense if we decide to go forward with this next year.
Did Alderman O'Brien raise his hand?
I did, but I'll yield to Alderman Clee, and then if you may call me afterwards, please.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comment, I have a question as much as I have a comment. I understand what the two previous alderwomen have commented as far as the cost of hitting this next year, but this would not then turn into an annual cost, other than if the possibility of us having to put them out. This would be a one and done cost as far as the purchasing of these items. So keeping that in mind, it would be possible if we decided that we were just going to do Main Street and maybe some of them, rather than expanding beyond the current 2,400 feet that we're doing now, because you're talking about taking these 200 and adding them to the 2,400. Is that correct?
Yeah.
To do a sample.
Yeah.
So then next year, if we bought it, we could buy just maybe 2,200 feet or less, depending upon how we wanted to do this. So, and then the following year, we don't have to buy them because we already have it. So it's not like this is going to become an annual cost, unlike if we decided to rent these as we're doing now, then it becomes an annual cost and so on. Am I correct on this thinking?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Alderman O'Brien.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Director Cummings, and I do have a couple of them. Is this going to come in the future to the Infrastructure Committee?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
That's a question ultimately for the president, but I would have to believe that the legislation that would request the narrowing of Main Street to continue would need to be referred to committee, and PEDC and infrastructure would be the two committees that I think would want to hear this, but absolutely infrastructure, I think, would need to weigh in on it. Okay. And I'd be happy to come to you. I'd be happy to come to you at whatever meeting you'd like before any legislation is filed as well, so we could start that conversation.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Director Cummings. If I may follow up, because as you know, working together with you, infrastructure has a pending parking study that is pending out there. And the longer that this, type of outside dining stays is going to skew the numbers with the parking study. But I think that's something that maybe at the termination of the outdoor dining, maybe with the infrastructure committee, maybe we can jump into that and get in at that particular time. But the thing is, I have several other infrastructure concerns. There is a loss of revenue in parking with this, and it's the additional costs of these barriers. We did meet the safety need, and that's why we went with the original, although barren, concrete ones. They don't look as nice, I understand that, but the thing is, they do meet the safety needs, and that's the one that is most priority. So therefore, because of the revenue that's involved, I would like to have, and I'll speak to the board president on this, to have infrastructure a little bit more involved. Maybe perhaps in the future, looking to a joint partnership between the public and the private into, supplementing some of these barriers. Because with the loss of revenue of parking, and then, it seems to be the only sole profit would be the different proprietors of the restaurants. Maybe there's something that could be jointly shared. It's something that possibly that could be explored at the very least. But I am going to support this because this, as you say, is a pilot program. This is going to give us the opportunity as we move into the future. If this is what we decide what we want to do, we're going to have enough time in good weather to look at the two in comparison and to help beautify the city if this is what we're going to do in the future. But I'll have further discussion with the board president with this, and like I say, and perhaps conversation with you. I'm sure you didn't forget about the parking study out there, so, and I know you didn't, so we'll have that discussion later on. Thank you, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, sir.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Making sure I'm not on mute again. I appreciate the conversation around this, and I think that Alderman O'Brien brought up some good infrastructure questions that were also on my mind. So I'm inclined to be okay with this for now, but I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, and I know we will, to make sure that we have this conversations and make sure traffic is, appropriate amount, parking, we're not getting completely down the line with revenue, and that also pushing. I think one of the things that I've heard from other businesses too is that it works great for the outdoor diners, but some of the retailers are feeling like there's not parking in front of their retail establishments. So I think this is a fine first phase, but I want to make sure that all of those concerns come up when we talk about it, because as the memo stated, this was originally supposed to be a temporary solution. And when you start to think about it as permanent, it's a very different conversation, or semi-permanent.
Anyone else? All right, could the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clay.
Yes.
Clerk says yes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
And Mayor Dodges.
Yes, and the motion passes. All right, the next communication is the communication from Mr. Mansfield, Radio Systems Manager, directed to Director Kim Kleiner. I think I saw Mr. Mansfield on here, correct or not?
It's not on mine.
Mr. Mansfield,
I am here.
Okay, good. Could you, well, we haven't gotten the motion from our clerk yet. So clerk, please make a motion, please.
Okay, I make a motion to accept and place on file, and for whatever the mayor said.
And it
I
would
don't
be-
have that one on my sheet.
Would be to approve the construction of the communications tower on Kessler Farm Drive.
Okay,
And Mr. as outlined in a communication from Mr. Mansfield to Kim Kleiner dated August 16th, 2020.
okay, I do have that one. That's the one that's in the amount of 35,426 from Valmont Industries. Is that it?
Mr. Mansfield?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay, sorry.
So could you brief
By
us,
roll call.
please? Now, well, let's have Mr. Mansfield explain the project.
Good evening. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing this to move forward. I also want to thank Kim Kleiner for her assistance and Ms. Parkinson for her assistance in the RFP process in this. For those of you who don't know, I'm the radio systems manager for the city. And basically what we do is we handle all of the radio communications for police, fire, DPW, anybody who has a radio that's attached to the city, that is our responsibility. We have 3 sites in the city, 3 tower sites in the city. And one of the tower sites is located on Kessler Farm Drive. Since 2017, the city has been told by Pennachuck Waterworks that they had intended on tearing down the water tank on Kessler Farm Drive. This particular water tank has housed one of the city's antenna systems for the last 20 years. And it's been a very viable location for us to operate the radio communications for the city. In this particular circumstance, the Pennachuck Waterworks announced that they were going to be dismantling the water tank at that site, and that we would have had to move our radio communications antennas off that tank so that they could basically tear down the water tank. We can't operate our radio communication system without that site. If we lost that site, we would lose pretty much the northwestern quadrant of the city for radio communications. So we worked with Pennachuck Waterworks. We came up with a plan to, and we work also with the Kessler Farm Condominium Association and Alderman Dowd to allow us to put to allow us to put a tower on that location. The initial location we have chosen was approved by Pennachuck Waterworks, and then shortly thereafter they came back and said they wanted the site moved. We had already received FAA approval to build a tower at that location, although since Pennachuck wanted us to move the tower to a different location, we had to go for reapproval through the entire reapproval process. We went through that process. We expected to have a quick turnaround from the FAA, and it actually took us 8 months to get that process approved. In the meantime, Pennachuck Waterworks had intended on tearing down the water tank at Kessler Farm Drive in April. And our project was to be completed in March of this year. We did not receive approval from the FAA till July 1st of this year. So I hate to say this, but because of COVID-19, in March, Pennachuck Waterworks shut down their plan to dismantle that water tank and basically extended it till next year, which has given us a very small window to now construct a communications tower and have our antennas added to it and have basically the site up and running. The other issue that we're running into, like I said, we finally received approval on July 1st from the FAA. Now that we're running into the issue of snow. We don't want to be pouring concrete in the snow. We don't want to be building a tower in the snow, and we don't want to be adding antennas in the snow. So that's why I had asked for this to be pushed forward this evening so that we could hopefully get this portion of the project approved. An RFP was sent out last month to several vendors to fabricate a 88-foot tower, which would hold multiple antennas and microwave dishes for the city's radio communications system. This tower is not going to be built for any other antennas. It's not a cell tower. It's strictly for public safety communications and Pennachuck Waterworks communications. We received the bids back, I believe last week. 4 bids came back from the RFP process. They were evaluated. There was an evaluation process that was in the RFP. So each vendor who responded knew exactly how we were going to be evaluating the proposals. After evaluation, the first one that came in was Belfort Capital out of Louisville, Ohio. They came in with a price of $21,920. Their proposal was missing everything but pretty much the price of the tower. So we had no idea what they were proposing. So at this point, they were disqualified from the running for the bids. We received three other quotes, or 3 other proposals. One was from Valmont Industries out of Valley, Nebraska, in the amount of $35,426. One from Sabre Industries out of Sioux City, Iowa, in the amount of $46,107. And one from Green Mountain Communications out of Pembroke, New Hampshire, totaling $48,404. After review of the remaining proposals, we decided to go with the second bidder, the second lowest bidder for cost, which is Valmont Industries. They are one of the top 3 leading manufacturers of towers in the United States. We actually have one of their towers right now on Shakespeare Road. And I'm looking to have get approval this evening to purchase this tower in the amount of $35,426. As another part to this, there will be another part coming forward, which will be another request for proposal for bidders to now bid on the foundation construction of the tower site, and also to basically put the tower up, to erect the tower so that it's operational. This bid will hopefully be going out no later than next week, and there will be a very short turnaround time for that as well. The turnaround time for the tower from Valmont Industries is between 8 and 10 weeks. We're going with worst case scenario of 10 weeks, which would have us having a delivery. If we cut a purchase order tomorrow, we would have a delivery by the last week in October. Before that tower is delivered, we need that foundation to set for 28 days. That's why we are on a very, very tight timeline. So that's the rest of the process as it goes. Once the tower is up, we have already approved for the antennas to be attached, and they should be attached shortly thereafter the tower is set. So now, thank you for your time. And are there any questions, Mr. Mayor?
Anybody questions or comments?
Alderman Dowd.
I just want to point out that the new antennas could not go on top of the new tower because the new tower is going to be concrete, not steel, and it will have a rounded top. So the antennas had to go on a tower, which has been through the board at Kessler Farm and approved, and it's been like a 2 or 3 year process, but it's something that really needs to be done.
Anyone else? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Mansfield, would there be other additional costs such as the auxiliary infrastructure, such as the generator, air conditioning, a HUD or something like that to power up the equipment that's going to be generated on this tower? Or is that already exists and will be transferred off-site or closer where this tower is going to be erected?
So, thank you, Alderman O'Brien, and it is nice to see you get back and looking healthy. Currently, there is a building already on site with a generator, and it's already set up. The intent would be to build this tower directly next to the building that we have on site, so there would be no loss of communication. I would have the antennas mounted, cabled, and put into the communications building that is on site. And within minutes, I would be able to transfer the antennas from the old antennas to the new antennas with very little to no disruption of our radio communications. Once that is complete, we're going to have the antennas removed off of the water tank, and we will be saving those for our future use.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mansfield and Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anybody else? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Linda,
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
you're muted.
I'm like, Alderman Clee, nothing, Alderman Clee. Okay. So you say yes, and clerk says yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mayor Dodges.
Yes, the motion passes. The next communication
Thank you.
is one from, wait, where did I put it?
Yeah.
Next communication is from David Fredette. Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Now, that is the one that I really don't have.
It's a communication from David Fredette dated August 6th. It just addresses the police utility vehicle, which we already voted on.
Okay.
So we could simply accept it and replace. So the motion would be simply to accept, place on file.
Oh, okay. The communications from David Fredette on the police utility vehicle.
Motion is
I
to
roll
accept.
call.
The motion is to accept the communication and place it on file. Would you clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clee,
Yes,
clerk says yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mayor Dodges.
Yes. The motion passes. Next, we have unfinished business, and we have none. New business resolutions, none. New business ordinances, none. The record of expenditures. Is there a motion on the record of expenditures?
Yes. I motion that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinance pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from July 31st, 2020 to August 13th, 2020 by roll call.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say, or excuse me, could the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clee,
yes,
clerk says yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
and Mayor Dodges.
Yes, motion passes. General discussion. I would just like to welcome Alderman O'Brien, and I'm glad to see that he's back and seemingly feeling well. He's made a couple of jokes, so I know he must be feeling pretty good, and I'm glad to see that. So thank you for getting back to us. Any other general discussion? Alderwoman Clee.
yes, Mr. Mayor, I kind of like to echo that I'm glad to see, while we're not seeing him in person, but to see Alderman O'Brien here with a smile on his face. And, you look great. Thank
Yes,
you
it does.
for coming to this.
Anyone else for general discussion? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. I would be amiss if I didn't thank my colleagues. I was going to do it at a board meeting, but I'll do it at the committee meetings as well. Your general words of concern and best wishes to my recovery and my health were greatly appreciated. It probably helped move me along. And of course, now I'm under the watchful and loving eye of my wife. I'm doing everything that the doctor tells me to do. Honey, if you're watching, I am listening to you. So, we'll do better. And, but I would like to thank you all. And I'll tell you, besides being my colleagues, you showed a high degree of friendship. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? General discussion? If not, we'll go on to public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment to the committee? Remarks by aldermen. Any aldermen have remarks? Alderwoman Klee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I motion to adjourn.
Could the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
clerk says yes. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mayor Dodge.
Yes, and the meeting of the Finance Committee is adjourned at 8:01.